and welcome back to our video series, Governing Future. I'm Rosie, a student and the Youth Ambassador of the Boston Global Forum. So in this episode, we have the privilege of speaking with one of the foremost scholars on cyberpolitics, Dr. Nazli Choucri. Dr. Choucri is a professor of political science at MIT, and she has spent decades studying the intersection of technology, international relations, and global governance. Today, we'll be diving into her insights of the future of cyber governance, AI's role in public administration, and how models like the AIWS Government 24/7 model could transform how governments and citizens interact. And in the oh my god, I stopped this too much. I'm gonna start again.
Remember, you told me half an hour.
Okay. Hello and welcome back to our podcast series, Governing Future. I'm Rosie, a student and also an intern at the Boston Global Forum. In this episode, we have the privilege of speaking with one of the foremost scholars on cyberpolitics, Dr. Nazli Choucri. Dr. Choucri is a professor of political science at MIT. She has spent decades studying the intersections of technology, international relations, and global governance. Today, we'll be diving into her insights on the future of cyber governance, AI's role in public administration, and how models like the AIWS Government 24/7 could transform how governments and citizens interact in the digital age. And Dr. Choucri, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, it's a pleasure. So I'm here to see what we can clarify in the domain.
Okay, so Dr. Choucri, your pioneering work on cyberpolitics has been instrumental in shaping our understanding of how digital technologies influence global power dynamics. As we continue to see AI play a large role in governance, I would love to start by asking you about the concept of cyberpolitics itself. So you introduced the concept of cyberpolitics to describe how political activity unfolds in cyberspace. With the rapid rise of AI, cyber conflicts, and digital platforms, how has this concept evolved, especially in the context of the AIWS Government 24/7 model, where AI augments the role of government?
That's a very complicated and very long question, so why don't we take it piece by piece? It's important to appreciate that cyberspace is a constructed space of humanity by humanity. The technology allowed it to construct. But think of it as a space. And that's a space where countries, people, individuals, you and me interact. But we never thought about how to govern that. We thought about how to govern the sea, land, territory, countries, etc. That had clear boundaries. In the cyber domain, many features of the cyber domain don't fit our model of governance. So we have to be adaptive and try to see how can we adjust how we govern, where we govern, in what way we govern to an arena that is virtual, but that is controlled by many different actors, and many of which that we don't even know about, because we don't do census of these actors. So, on your questions about AI, the relationship between that and cyberpolitics, or that and cybersecurity, is just emerging. We're just beginning to see what it could be, and there are some barriers that have to be transcended. Maybe think of them as technology barriers. And this is, the more we rely on AI in its various forms, the more we need data and data centers, and the more we need data and data centers, the more energy use we have. And when this happens, or when this is happening, it results in more CO2 emissions in the atmosphere and more environmental degradation. So we have to begin to think about how to balance all these things. The second part that's really interesting about AI is the technology is spreading very quickly, very fast, by very many different groups, and the younger generation are being educated in class about this potential algorithmic-based capability. So we anticipate a global population years from now of being very literate and quite conversant in the basics of AI. Now, if that is true, if this does happen, then we have to ask ourselves, well, how can we, where do we keep order? How can we understand when the AI itself, the system you're using, is derailed, or you derail it, or you don't even know that it's gone off? So our mutual dependency, human, AI, human, is emerging. We don't know where it's going. And there are basically two classes of group, two people, sets of people with opinions. Those that say we just push ahead, and those that say, well, we have to be very careful because we don't know we're pushing ahead to what.
Yeah.
So related to this is the speed with which the cyber interactions as tools and games and everything else on the positive side and on the negative side have developed is much faster than anything else we've had in human history. And so the speed itself is creating challenges for what do we do? You know, we don't have rules. We don't know how to tell everybody to stop because we don't know who everybody is and what they're doing, you know, etc. So you asked about governance. I guess I would say that we can already see very clearly excellent routine and growing applications of AI for government, routine, filling out forms, etc., etc. Where it becomes a little, I won't say problematic, but we don't know which way to go, is the algorithm, the viable algorithm for governance, where we have to take into account trade-offs, where we have to take into account unintended consequences as part of, and credibility. Yeah. Humanity may not be ready to be managed by machines, but I know that all of us want assistance in any way we can. You know, whether it's an automobile which is clunky, or tools that would make it so much easier for you to get your Google in your Ring. You know, all of them. You don't need an Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the world that we're moving into is not a world that we have had precedents for, and everybody is moving at the same level, at different rates of change, but moving towards recognizing and questioning, but also accepting and adopting different AI tools.
Yeah, so thank you. Now when we think about cyberspace itself, it's not just a space for communication, but a political arena. And the AIWS Government 24/7 model depends on understanding both of these roles. So in your book of Cyberpolitics in International Relations, you discuss cyberspace as both a technological infrastructure and a political arena. How do these dual identities complicate diplomacy and the international policy making, particularly when you consider AI models in governance like the one proposed by AIWS?
So, the AIWS has been the leader in the governance models of this sort. But now many groups are coming up with models of AI models, partial models, taking into account issues that we now understand are important, but we weren't aware of it earlier in the management of disinformation. How can you recognize if you ran into disinformation? How do you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't say, hi, I'm disinformation. No, you have to find out what it is. So new uncertainties, but also the ethics of AI is gradually being developed, and it's not established enough and agreed upon. So different parties or different groups using tools don't really have the same principles and ethical principles. And in education, for example, we're developing boundaries as to when are students allowed to use AI for creativity or for design or whatever and be graded? And when the grading should be done only on what they themselves have generated with the calculator or with algorithms. So it sounds simple, but almost every undergraduate is very conversant in basics in AI and doesn't want to be held back. You know, I can do a better essay with this or this or this. But but it's not enough to create an educated, creative individual. So there's this tension between a reliance on AI completely and the algorithms that are being developed by businesses, etc., and retaining a human critique and validation. And we're very weak in that area. We're much faster in creating more and more and more models and more systems and machines that create learning, that create machines that create learning, you know?
Yeah.
But not good at quality. Well, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you. So do you think like does this duality create more friction in international negotiations, or could AI, as envisioned in the AIWS model, help harmonize some of these complexities?
Well, it could help identify much more effectively than we have in the past where the differences of views might be among negotiators, and where possibilities for negotiations that have not been discovered can be made. You know, so it's very helpful for clarifying the terrain, clarifying, improving the environment of the negotiation, but also be very helpful in calculating very quickly, hoping the algorithm is okay, the advantages and the disadvantages of reaching an agreement on this particular clause, or this particular, or alternatively, how to stay away from potential agreements that look very good but may cost you a lot in the future.
Okay, so as we move toward a more interconnected, AI-powered world, power dynamics are bound to shift. AI can help level the playing field, but it can also exacerbate existing inequalities. So you've written that cyberspace offers asymmetric advantages to smaller actors, enabling them to have more influence than they might in traditional geopolitics. However, critics argue that the digital realm is still dominated by tech giants and resource states. In the AIWS Government 24/7 model, where AI learns from great leaders to support today's decision makers, can smaller actors leverage this system to gain influence, or does the digital world remain dominated by few powerful players?
I think the world is dominated by few powerful players that are fighting over how to get a share of the market of all those little ones.
Yeah.
This is just in markets, buying and selling. But those little players become more educated, more skilled, more etc., etc., etc. They're not going to compete with the big ones, but the big ones will find it necessary to take into account their view. And here we have a very interesting issue in international politics in the world, and this is decisions at the global level, international level, are taken by countries, sovereign states. But the companies that control the innovations so far are private companies that are not countries, have good relations with their home country, but they don't have a persona, a legal persona in international politics, but they have one in international markets. So there has been an emerging idea, just an idea, and I'm not sure if it's a good idea. In fact, I would say it's too crude to be developed, but to establish the equivalent of sovereignty for companies. So Vietnam is a sovereign state. Its companies, for example, could have the sovereignty, not of Vietnam, but of sovereign companies. Let's call them V, if you wish. And the question is, are there any advantages to this or disadvantages? And one advantage is it gives them a position in international law. On the other hand, you could say that international law, as we now have it, is so old-fashioned that it's not useful. They should go back and rewrite it from scratch.
Yeah.
And so there's no point in creating new notions of sovereignty when it's already building it on old versions of sovereignty. Then the countries, like sovereign states, all the countries don't particularly want other entities, other groups that are not countries to have sovereignty. So you can see the mess.
Yeah. Okay. So what, in your view, would need to happen for smaller nations to truly benefit from the AIWS model in a fair and equitable way?
Collaborations among themselves, being innovators themselves, because this is a case where the innovation is very closely tied to the word of creativity, how creative, not how many drones you can build or whatever. I still think that the smaller countries the examples we have are the Nordic countries and Iceland and Finland and so forth, that almost overnight have become major players. I see that as a good model for the smaller countries.